All right, as promised in the last video, same shirt, glasses, hat, but we're gonna actually start writing today. Let's do it.
To be in a movie with you.
Welcome back to the regular audience, or if it's your first time to the channel or the series. Essentially what we're doing is we are a team of filmmakers, and our next large film project we're starting to work on, we're welcoming our YouTube audience into the process to help us make it together, including contributing ideas. So we're really excited about this. That's the short recap. You can go watch some of the other videos that explain it better. But today we're gonna start writing. So I have multiple cameras today so I can walk around the room. Can you still see me over here and over here? So where we left off in the last video was essentially that we're planning a 6-part, 30-minute episodes each limited series for December 2025 release, meaning we're trying to make 6 episodes, half hour each episode, so it ends up being 3-hour long, finished product. A limited series that would come out for sure for free to our audience. We don't know for sure at this point how we're gonna release to the rest of the world. That's what I'm so excited about with this. I don't wanna keep coming back to that, but essentially what I'm excited about with this is that like all of those details that normally we have to do exclusively behind the scenes, like figure out distribution, marketing, all those strategies, like we get to do it together. So you can help also ease the burden, I guess. But basically one of the things I felt like I needed to clarify from the last video is that right now, I'm gonna talk as though this is what we're doing. But I have no idea what we're doing, okay? Everything I'm about to say, which we're gonna get into the actual story right now. Like I'm gonna say, right now, this is the story. But I'm gonna preface this once and for all with, until it changes. Or right now, this is my best guess, or God willing, or this is currently the plan, or hypothetically, but instead of me saying like in front of every single thing that I say, currently our plan is this. I'm just gonna say it like this is the plan, and we're gonna all flesh it out together, and we're gonna all figure it out together, and as it changes, we'll all see it change. So, without further ado, this is, hypothetically, the story. That just made me so nervous. Here we go. I feel like I sort of have the beginning, and I have my best attempt at the end, and then I have some of the pieces of the middle. 2021, I think. We did a music video for We Are One. Card can show up here so you can go watch it. And it was essentially this boy who builds a time machine. And that subject matter has sort of stuck with me throughout starting this writing process. So my pitch is, there's a kid, teenager, I think it's a boy, 16, 17, sort of angsty teenager vibes, right? We're not talking about like a 12, 13-year-old who's just sort of voices changing and they're figuring themselves out. I'm talking about like a sort of disgruntled older teenager who thinks that the world has already passed them by because a few years ago, his mom passed away. And so the main character, I don't know his name, but the main character is this kid, and mom has passed away, and I think the way it's actually gonna start, this is my pitch right now. Tell me what you think about this. It actually starts with the kid as like, 14, 15, and he accidentally discovers a time machine. This is a super like massive, like the size of a room, and it's like very 50s, 60s, almost sort of steampunk, like everything is powered by steam and like whirring little metal pieces, and like it's got some sort of like obvious like mystical element. Like it's not like, hey, we've cracked the code scientifically for time travel. I don't want to go that angle. I want to go a little bit more fantasy. Like he stumbles across accidentally while running away from a bunch of bullies right at the very beginning. He stumbles across this time machine, discovers it, and at this time his mom is really sick. So we've got the kid, mom is sick. All right, I can't spell. The kid's mom is sick. And when he discovers this time machine, it immediately becomes for him like, this is the ticket. And so it's sort of like we're gonna take the first, I don't know, if we went this route, it'd be like the first 5 to 10 minutes of episode 1 is actually years before episode 1 starts. We fade to black, or however we got to do it to go 3 years later or something like that, 2-3 years later. because crucial detail, when he discovers the time machine doesn't work. It's this big, amazing, massive, super cool looking thing, but he tries to fire it up and a piece of it breaks. It doesn't work. You find out then mom is sick. Fade to black 3 years later. Now we come to Christmas time, Christmas season, a few years later, but mom is sick, and we'll make sure we know this is Christmas time. Sure. But mom is sick at the beginning, and then when we come back a few years later, mom has passed, okay? So mom passed away in the time between the discovery of the time machine and where we come back into this story. So the reason I think that is helpful, at least as a story and a literary device, is I want the setup to be at the beginning very obvious that like homie's whole goal in life, the reason he wants this time machine fixed, all of episode 1 is building towards him finally fixing the time machine so that he can bring mom back, because Christmas time is the worst because mom loved Christmas and now mom's gone and she passed around Christmas, and so he hates Christmas. But if he could get this time machine working and bring mom back, they could get to have Christmas like they used to. That's his running mental monologue, right? That's his motivation. Like that's his character. His character is fighting to build this time machine back to like to fix that little part that was broken so it can run and he can bring mom back. We come back into, when we do 3 years later, we get to this 3 years later portion where now he's that sort of angsty teenager, 16, 17, somewhere in there. He's about to maybe graduate next semester or whatever, but he's sort of very obviously hurt. He's in a lot of pain from losing his mom. Like he's just overall crabby, like normal teenage angsty crabby, but also like has gone through something really deep that's really painful. So when we come in and we enter the story a few years later, he's in the middle of a heist. Like he's in the middle of breaking in somewhere, and the vibe you get is right away that he's just sort of, a troublemaker, like just sort of a bad kid. But then after the heist is over and he gets in trouble by the cops and they actually, they quote unquote arrest him, but they bring him home to his aunt, who is his current caretaker. This is mom's sister. Bring him home to his aunt, and the cops give him sort of here's your last warning because we've caught you doing this stuff so many times. But they let him off the hook. They don't like throw him in jail. Like they're trying to give grace to him because they know he's been through a lot. Trying to give grace to the aunt who's his caretaker, trying to care for him. She's essentially a single mom. She's been through a lot. And lost her sister, so she's been through a lot. So you find out though after the police leave that like I think he hides it maybe in his mouth. Like that's what's in my head right now is if he hides it in his mouth, whatever the heist was for was not just to like break in and just be malicious. He stole the final piece that he needed to fix this time machine. And so in that 3-year gap, he has figured out what it is, how to fix it, how to bring this thing back to life. And he's been progressively pulling off, like stealing all over town, progressively pulling off heists in order to be, can I put this up here? He's been progressively pulling off heists in order to fix this time machine so that he can bring mom back. So anyways, he gets the time machine up and running. Now that he has this piece, he gets the time machine up and running. The end of episode 1, so there's 6 episodes. The end of episode 1 is he puts the piece in. So we'll go the end of E1. The machine works. So the end of episode 1, he puts the final piece that he has been stealing all these pieces. He puts the thing together. The thing starts whirring and steam comes out, and it's all big, climactic, super exciting. Steam everywhere. Did I already say steam? There's a lot of steam if I said it twice. It's just gonna be this big like smoke show basically where like smoke starts filling the frame and there's this center capsule more or less where the person is supposed to come out. And so you're so excited because he's finally figured it out. Mom's coming back. They get to have Christmas together, and the machine builds up and the door opens and you see like a hand a hand like come out of the, like maybe a hand like this, like just shoots out of the steam. End of episode 1. That's the pitch. Because we got to cliffhang every single one of these episodes. We got to keep the audience wanting to come back for the next one. But what you find out at the beginning of episode 2, when a man walks through the time machine, and he is very, very upset about it because it's not his mom. But like all of episode 2 is going to be spent, they don't know each other. They don't know why he came through the time machine instead of his mom, like he was, she was supposed to. But essentially what the kid did, like the way the time machine sort of works is that he needed a time and a location. And his whole life, his mom had told him this story of how the first date she ever went on with his dad, who has not been a part of his life his entire life. But their first date, he knew exactly where it was. It was this park in town, and he knew the date and the time that they met, but he screws up the time. This is a great point to maybe throw in an idea. Like either he screws up the time, or I think another version of it I was thinking about is that mom didn't realize in telling him the story that like dad had actually gotten to that park bench before her. Like he showed up to the date early, nervous to meet her. And so he comes and sits on the bench. And essentially when he comes early to the date to sit on the bench before mom ever gets there, that's the moment in time that the kid chooses for the time machine, which means he accidentally brings back his father, or brings forward his father. This is gonna be a lot because it's a time travel story. And so there's gonna be a lot of moments where stuff's gonna be very confusing and I don't understand all the physics of it and I'm not necessarily gonna try, all right? Some of it is just gonna be like, I don't know, time travel. And some of it is like, I want an actual answer so that we can feel as, polished of a story as possible. So he accidentally brings back his dad. They discover over the course of episode 2 who they are to each other because he's never met his son because he didn't know his son existed. And son's never met his dad because dad didn't know he existed. So they don't know when they see each other who each other is. Over the course of episode 2, they understand slowly who each other is. I think through the aunt. I'm trying to figure that part out. Because the aunt, I was thinking maybe the aunt could be the one that like initially set the sister up on their first date, but I don't know. We'll throw a comment. I'm curious about that part too. There's definitely a hole there that I'm trying to fill. But essentially they discover that it's their father and son, and the son hates him. Like he hates his dad. This is the last person on planet Earth he would have wanted to come through that time machine. And so it's super painful because not only is it not his mother, the only person on planet Earth he wanted to come through this time machine, but it is his father who's the last person on planet Earth he'd ever want to see. So episode 2 is them fighting like cats and dogs, sort of starting to figure out how do I get, they start trying to figure out how do I get back? How do we get him back? Because he's the last person we want here. But I'm pretty sure the time machine broke on dad's, with dad, when dad came through, the time machine broke. And so now we're back to sort of where we were a few years ago. Episode 2 is maybe episode 2 ends with them discovering who they are to each other. Maybe they don't really get that information until the very end of episode 2. I don't know, thoughts? But at some point in episode 2, even if it's the very, very end, even if it's sort of the cliffhanger, they discover who they are to each other. I think it would be a great cliffhanger actually for episode 2. Now that I say it out loud, I do think that's maybe the right move. But they discover who they are to each other at the end of episode 2. Thus begins their journey of like trying to figure out how to get him back, because they want to get him back and he wants to get mom brought forward. So obviously this is we're going trying to go 1,000 miles an hour and just sort of give you all the pieces. I think the thought process that I had was that basically right when mom, because they never got married, right when mom found out she was pregnant, the dad comes and tells her about this incredible job opportunity that he got. She knows how excited he was about it. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. She'd never want him to miss it. And so instead of telling him that she's pregnant, she keeps that information from him so he can go off and have the dream job. And they separate forever. She raises her son as a single mom. Dad never knows he exists. What I'm really struggling with, I'll tell you, is they need to start out on an adventure now. So like now they understand who each other is, and the ending, we have to get dad back. Like he has to get back to the past so that the future turns out, you know, it's very sort of Back to the Future. Like he has to go back to make sure that everything goes as planned, or I guess technically the grandfather paradox, like the kid wouldn't exist anymore. So like the ending we sort of know, like we have to get dad back, but the adventure that takes place from the moment they realize who each other is to the ending where he goes back is where I'm stuck. Like I think the aunt like owns a business, like she has a restaurant or something like that, and I'd love to have one episode as an entire episode sort of focused on like them doing, like she's she's underwater with this business because she's fighting to try and be a single mom to him, and that's a lot of work, and it's causing her business and her romantic life. There's this guy maybe she's interested in, and it's not gonna ever happen because she doesn't have any capacity for life outside of this troublesome teenager. And so I'd love to have an episode where like dad and son team up and they pursue, like they do, I don't know, a big fundraiser is probably cheesy, but like they do something big that like really helps her business. Like they pour into her in a lot of ways the way that she's cared for him so much. I was thinking yesterday about maybe there's a time machine guy. Like there's a guy that they eventually find, or dad knows a guy who's just like the most brilliant scientist, inventor, whatever, and they need to get to that guy because he'll know how to fix the machine and get him back. Like, I don't know, like they need to embark on an adventure from the end of episode 2 through the end of episode 5. So episodes 3, 4, and 5 in many ways need to be an adventure that they go on. So, man, there's so many things you guys could throw in comments on. This will be the hardest one to do because this is the big picture overview of sort of the whole thing. But that's the gist. Tell me your thoughts on all of it. I'm just curious. I'm gonna literally just dump this all on you right now, just out of curiosity to see if people will actually be interested in joining this. And I'll tell you, lastly, the only thing that I am really kicking around, keeping from you, because the whole point of this is to be open about the whole story and invite you into all of it. But here's my thoughts. The very, very end of the story is dad gets back in the time machine. And dad gets back in the time machine on Christmas Eve. And so big flat, the time machine whirs up. They had gotten it fixed by this point. Dad steps in. I will never forget you, son. And son's like, please don't. Like they've formed a bond at this point, and it's like they don't know when he goes back in time if he will go back with the knowledge that he has a son, or I guess will have a son, or if he's gonna go back and his memory gets reset to exactly where he was sitting on that park bench. And the time machine whirs up and dad steps in, smoke, the screen goes white. There's a million different ways to do Christmas morning the next day after the time machine works. And right now, I'm really thinking strongly, because that would be the last 2 to 5 minutes. Like at that point, the story is over. It's just the little tidbit of like, how exactly did it turn out? I kind of want that to be my present to you guys. Now, I'm open to the discussion, but I do feel like if you guys know, I just think it would be fun. I think that's what it is. I think it would be fun if you guys know everything about the story, except like the one little tidbit, because that one little tidbit right at the end is like one of the most exciting pieces of it. But it'll just be like, I don't know, like that's my gift to you guys, is you guys get to have the joy of, even if you've seen every single episode of this stuff, and then you watch the whole series as it's being cut, and even if you're a part of every single video, you still get to enjoy one surprise. And so I'm really interested in that. Again, I'm open to anything, everything in my life, it feels like with creative stuff is hypothetical. I change my mind a lot, and I'm gonna keep my mind open to being open. So everything's subject to change, but I like that idea of maybe my final Christmas gift to you guys, the audience who's been faithfully watching, is you get a little surprise at the very end. So tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts on the story. I'll see you next week. God willing, next week, I will be in England. And so we will be doing one of these videos together from London. Maybe I will be like channeling my inner C.S. Lewis, Christopher Nolan, my favorite director, favorite author. Like maybe I'm just gonna be so much more creative in that English air.
Got here like 3 hours early and still we almost missed our flight.